Hi everyone, welcome back to my UGC NET Psychology series. Before we dive in, I want you to do one important thing. Check out the practice questions given in the description after watching this video. Treat them like a mini mock test and see how much you actually understood, not just memorized. Trust me, that's where real preparation begins. So today we are tackling a topic that students usually find abstract and honestly a bit boring. Issues in psychology, especially the colonial encounter, postcolonial psychology, and the lack of a distinct disciplinary identity. But instead of definitions, let's think of this like a story of how psychology itself has been shaped, controlled, and is still trying to find its own identity. Imagine you are in a classroom during colonial India. The syllabus, the books, the theories, everything is coming from outside, mainly from Europe. Now here's the catch. These theories were developed based on their culture, their society, and their problems. This is what we call the colonial encounter in psychology. During colonial rule, psychology in countries like India didn't develop organically. Instead, it was imported. British administrators and scholars introduced psychological testing, intelligence measures, and educational system, but these tools were designed with Western populations in mind. For example, early intelligence tests often assume certain language skills, cultural knowledge, or ways of thinking that Indian students simply didn't share. So when Indian students scored differently, it wasn't because they were less capable, it was because the system itself wasn't designed for them. This created a subtle but powerful impact. It made Western psychology look universal, and local ways of understanding behavior took inferior or unscientific. Now, fast forward to after independence, you might think, okay, now psychology in India would become completely independent too, right? But here's the interesting part, it didn't happen that easily. This is where post-colonial psychology comes in. It studies how the effects of colonialism continue even after political independence. Think about it like this. Even if the ruler leaves, the mindset sometimes stays. Psychologists continued using Western theories, Western research methods, and even Western definitions of what is normal or abnormal. For instance, concepts like individualism, focusing on personal achievement and independence, are central in Western psychology. But in India, collectivism, family relationships, community plays a much bigger role. So when we apply Western models blindly, we miss the richness of our own cultural context. A very simple example, in many Western settings, living with your parents as an adult might be seen as dependency, but in India it is often seen as responsibility, connection, and even emotional strength. Post-colonial psychology challenges this mismatch. It asks, can we really understand human behavior without considering culture, history, and social context? Now comes the most important issue, the lack of a clear identity in psychology, especially in countries like India. Let me ask you something. Is psychology a natural science like biology, or is it a social science like sociology, or is it something in between? The confusion doesn't stop here because psychology in post-colonial societies has borrowed so heavily from the West. It often struggles to define its own voice. It's like trying to speak in someone else's accent all the time. You are understood, but it doesn't feel authentic. For example, many research studies in India still replicate Western models instead of creating theories rooted in Indian realities like joint family system, spiritual practices, or indigenous healing tradition. This leads to a lack of originality and a fragmented identity. Psychology becomes a mix of borrowed ideas rather than a discipline grounded in its own cultural context. If you connect all these ideas, you will see a clear pattern. The colonial encounter introduced Western psychology. Post-colonialism explains why we are still influenced by it, and the lack of disciplinary identity shows the ongoing struggles to define something truly our own. It's not just history, it's something that still affects how you study psychology today. For your UGC NET exam, don't just memorize definition, try to understand the flow. Colonial encounter, imposition of Western ideas, Postcolonial psychology, critique and reflection, lack of identity, ongoing challenge in developing indigenous psychology. If you can explain this in your own words with examples, you are already ahead of most students. Now here's your next step. Don't skip it. Go to the description and attempt the practice questions I have given. Treat it like a real mock test. No notes, no shortcuts. That is the only way to check whether you truly understood these concepts or just listen passively. And if you found this video helpful, please subscribe. Make sure you stay consistent with this lecture series, because psychology is not just about memorizing theories, it's also about seeing the world differently.